Right, let's going to start with Arsenal because they are top of the table at the moment, aren't they? After this comprehensive 3-0 win over Bournemouth, 2 goals from their new captain, Martin Odegaard, inside the first 11 minutes, set them on their way to 3 points. Miguel, I just wanted to look back, rewind the clock, if you like, 12 months ago, because actually 3 defeats on the bounce, and everyone was talking about Mikel Arteta potentially getting the sack. I'm guessing, on reflection, they're quite glad they stuck with him. Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose it's a great show of the value of faith in that regard and sticking to a longer-term project, because I think there's lots of other clubs in the Premier League that would have pushed the button, actually twice in Arteta's reign, really, because it was a similar situation 9 months beforehand when he went in that really bad run before they got the win against Chelsea in the full lockdown season in 2020-21. But also, I mean, it's not just the results that are completely different, to be fair. It's also the context going into the game. And if you go back to that Brentford game, they had something like 3 or 4 key players out. Arteta still didn't have the team as he wanted it. We had Aubameyang there, who became such an issue. Whereas this season, he goes in with the team. I mean, he's talked a little bit about transfers after the game yesterday on Sky, where he said he wants maybe 1 more player. But otherwise, he probably has his, not just his first 11, but his squad almost exactly how he wants it. Jesus obviously gives him an outlet and looks a completely different player even to what he was under Pep Guardiola. And there's just that sense of focus running right through the team. And as if it's all coming together. I mean, I know we'll talk about Manchester United later in the show, but I mean, it shows just such a stark contrast to that. Whereas with Arsenal, after 2 or 3 very rocky years, we're seeing the benefits of some medium-term planning. Now, I don't think we should get ahead of ourselves. It was 3 relatively forgiving fixtures, but at the very least, you can say there's more evidence of steady evolution and that the team looks good. Yeah, I mean, dare I say it, they are looking, I mean, I know it's early stages, but they're looking a little bit invincible, it feels. You know, they've got that kind of structure. Let's not use that word yet. But they're looking really good together, aren't they? And Gabriel Jesus has been described as unplayable. Yeah. I mean, he feels like he's playing with all this freedom in the world. Is he kind of a completely different kettle of fish to what he was under Pep Guardiola, do you think? Well, yeah, because he knows that he is the man. He is the main man. He is the person who has got the responsibility of scoring the goals for the club. Obviously, Nketiah's signed a new deal. He'll stay there long term. But when he was at City, he was a cog in the wheel, really. Whereas he is at the centre, if you like, of that wheel. And even though he didn't score yesterday, he was still impressive. His work. Well, he set up the first, didn't he? Well, indeed. Yeah. And I think that sums him up. He is so hard-working. He makes a contribution in everything that's positive about what Arsenal are trying to do. But I think as far as Miguel was saying, I think that in general terms, it's about the bigger picture with Arsenal. It's about the recruitment as a whole. Let me just show you one of the papers, because all of the papers today go with similar headlines, but I've picked out top guns in the Mirror Football. They did take my breath away. I'm sure they did. They see what I did there. Well done. Yeah. Don't please break into song. It's too early on a Sunday. You have to be of a certain age to get it. Disappointing not used the new one. But look at the subdeck on the left-hand side. Tugo hero Odegaard sits up a seaside stroll as rampant gunners lead the way in the Premier League. Now, Bournemouth are no slouches. A really good opening day win for them. They've shown themselves to have a bit about them. Scott Parker's got them well organised, but they were just outclassed by Arsenal yesterday. And lots of people are qualifying the victory and the other 2 wins and saying it's only those. But they're the kind of places that Arsenal dropped points last season. And that's why the context is important. I think that you don't give them enough credit in some respects if you sort of say, oh, it's only Bournemouth. I think, tell that to Aston Villa fans, for example, who were beaten by Bournemouth. And I think the recruitment as a whole, I was at Mikel Arteta's press conference on Friday, and he was talking about the joined-up thinking at the club. And the timing of the documentary at the moment is perfect as well, because it tells us how they got to this point. It didn't happen overnight. There were some difficult moments. There were some harsh team talks. There were big decisions to make over Aubameyang. And lots of people said, when you get rid... I was among them. When you get rid of somebody like that, you have to win. And they did keep winning, but they weren't winning with enough regularity to overhaul Spurs. But having suffered what they've suffered, they've got to this place now where we're all gushing about them because they are all singing from the same hymn sheet. Well, just on that as well, I mean... maybe with previous Arsenal sides, or with some of the perceptions people had of even Arteta's Arsenal, it would have been very easy for them to tailspin
with the way that last season finished, because it seemed not just a huge moment or financial moment because it meant Spurs got into the Champions League and not Arsenal, but also psychological, because really they should have got there. What they needed, 4 points, I can't remember the exact maths, but it was they knew what they had to do going into the last 3 games and failed. Yeah. But yet, it's as if that's been completely forgotten about. The momentum and positive atmosphere about the team is so good. But also, I mean, even in relation to yesterday's game and the kind of dismissal of Bournemouth, well, I mean, Scott Parker, a really adept manager, particularly good at setting up teams with a kind of low block to frustrate bigger sides. And in previous seasons, and particularly under Arteta in that maybe first year and a half, there were so many games where Arsenal had like that, where they become very passive, passing the ball in kind of these flat lines in front of the defence. They'd struggle to open teams up, whereas now they're all kind of angles going everywhere, and there's no problem whatsoever, as evidenced by the fact they scored in 5 minutes.
Absolutely. Do you think it will affect, when we cover Arsenal games now, do you think psychologically there is already a shift in our attitude towards covering Arsenal? Yeah,
I would say so. And I mean, I was even looking at some of the reaction online and social media, and that from Arsenal fans who were, talking about how it's not always like this. Because really, I mean, since about 2007, Arsenal have been a huge club, but one that was always prone to these kind of meltdowns, really, or suddenly chaotic situations. And that's something that Arteta is working so hard to eradicate. And he's done that mostly, I think, by ensuring that every piece in the machine, or however you want to describe it, fits exactly and has the right mentality. And that's been quite an arduous process. I mean, with Aubameyang's departure, probably the biggest flashpoint. But then it's all about creating a system or a setup where the focus is all one way.
I mean, it's interesting, if you look at their starting 11, I think it's the youngest average starting 11. I mean, can you win anything with youngsters? Dare I say it? But look, William Saliba, one of those youngsters, he looks more than ready. But, it's taken him, 3 years to get into this senior squad?
And there's a very interesting thing there as well. I mean, I was talking to someone about this during the week in relation to Manchester United, where it was described to me how, I know we'll get onto that in detail later, but it was described to me how United are in a situation there where a lot of top players don't want to come to them. Now, Arsenal were in that situation 3 years ago, or really 2 to 3 years ago, particularly that summer of 2020.
By the way.
And Arteta got round that basically by looking 2 or 3 years down the line, by going for really top young talent. And it was put to me that was almost a kind of a Dortmund model at the time. And now we're seeing the full benefits of that, as well as the kind of players that want to be there. And Saliba is one of those. And he's an interesting case in himself, because I wrote during the summer that he'd actually had talks with the club about him, because, I mean, he had such a good season in France last year. He knows he's on the brink of a World Cup spot. And that's like many players, and I know this will be discussed with Tuchel later, and Pep Guardiola. The World Cup is really on his mind. So he went into this season, went into pre-season thinking, I need to be playing football regularly. That formed a lot of his discussions with Arteta. And he's responded well. He's reacted in the right way. And it's kind of testament, I suppose, maybe to the sort of characters that Arteta's brought in.
And he's got his own song, Saliba. Who's going to start that now?
I, for about half an hour, well, even during the game, I couldn't stop singing it. And then later in the evening, I'm doing bits and pieces around the house. And I'm
fancying a tequila as well.
Arsenal fans, you've killed me.
I think it might.
That's one of the better ones, I think.
It's fun, but it's quite repetitive. Look, 6 years, we mentioned this, didn't we, since a top 4 finish. From those 3 performances, that looks really achievable right now, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Arsenal look better now than they have done for many years. I think although they've had players that they've signed, good players, expensive players, they haven't really looked as though they fit into a system. There hasn't been, for me, a cohesiveness about the team. There's always been something missing. But when you look at them now, they've got that solidity at the back, and leadership and organisation at the back. I think the term solid probably applies more to their midfield. And then obviously they've got that creativity in the final third. They're good to watch. They have ideas. They have different ways of approaching the same thing. And everybody wants to roll their sleeves up and work. And I think when Arteta sat down and had a blueprint for what he wanted, with Edu Gaspar, we see that whiteboard, don't we, with 3 players in every position, and Edu talks through it in the documentary. I think this is where he wanted to be. But I think just as he tried very often not to get them too downhearted about the defeats, he won't get carried away with the victories.
No.
He'll celebrate them, but I think he'll know there's a long way.
But actually, I mean, I know the little diagrams he drew in the documentary kind of provoked a lot of, maybe comical responses. But I mean, I actually think that was interesting from the fact, because from what I've heard from people who work with Arsenal and that, is that it was really about, I suppose, just simplifying the message, because I think what he didn't want to do was overload the squad with info. So what happens, I suppose, is that they internalise the way he coaches on the training pitch. Then off the training pitch, it's more about keeping it simple and ensuring there's no confusion about anything. Which I suppose to some people it might seem simplistic to be drawing pictures like that, or a little light bulb stunt, but it has a simple effect. And again, I suppose it's one of those things where, as long as you're winning, you can say anything.
Absolutely. I mean, they are, but they are winning really well as well.
Yeah.
They're winning really convincingly. Miguel, I was interested. Pepe seems to be going. He's a record signing, £72 million. But he seems to be going on a season-long loan. We were reporting that this week to Nice. Good for both sides, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to a certain degree as well, even Pepe is a bit of a reflection of, he could almost be a relic from the previous era, in that now he's a signing that just doesn't fit. They've moved on. And I mean, previously you might have thought that Pepe, well, because he is capable of real impact coming off the bench, but now they've got so many options, Arsenal, they don't need him, and he could do revitalising his career. And who knows, maybe if he has a good season, we could well see him back. But yeah, for the moment, it's definitely the right decision.
When we're looking, it's only 3 games in. Obviously, Arsenal fans will be super excited about being top of the table, but it is only 3 games in. What will be reality for Arsenal come the end of this season, do you think? Top 4, do you think they could go further than that? Where do you think we'll see them?
Top 4. I think top 4 at the moment. They're still building.
Yeah.
The squad is still very good, very deep. There's a lot of intelligent work that's been done on it. Bear in mind, Tomiyasu, is now competing for a place with Ben White at right fullback. Zinchenko's competing with Tierney at left fullback. They've got options in the final third. We haven't really seen a lot of Marquinhos or Fabio Vieira. They've got young talent still to come into the squad. But I think top 4 is where they are. I think that would be the next stage of their development. And then obviously if they were to get in there, they could attract an even higher calibre of player that fits in with the profile of the club, not just anybody for the sake of it, as we all know. And we've seen, and he's told us, he is very, very hot on making sure that the players he has, that he brings in, buy into his values and the values of Arsenal Football Club.